Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 topics in 2 different sections, along with the daily mains answer writing program. In the analysis part, we'll first have a discussion with respect to why innovation matters for India, the challenges being confronted by the innovation ecosystem, and the way forward. Then, in the second topic, we'll have a discussion with respect to the need for increasing the women participation in politics. Then, in the prelims pointers, we'll have a discussion with respect to 5 different topics from a special perspective of the upcoming UPSC prelims 2026 along with the value addition. So stay tuned. Coming to the very first topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to why innovation matters for India. Currently, if you look at the world order, the race which we are witnessing right now among different countries is primarily that of the technological race. You see what is happening between US and China. Now, what you'll have to understand is that with the coming of new and emerging technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, what we'll have to understand is technology is playing a very important role with respect to the national power. When we talk about India, India has definitely made a lot of progress with respect to the technological domain. We are focusing upon the innovation part, but still there are certain issues. For example, if I were to tell you, in India, what we are finding is that we have the policy intent, we have the entrepreneurial skills, the spirits, but still we are not able to match the global requirements. Still, we are not able to influence the global technology domain. Still, we see that the private participation in India with respect to the research and development is very minuscule if you compare it with the other countries. So, therefore, if India has to become what we call as the Vishwaguru, it would have to significantly invest in this particular domain. We'll have to see, first of all, what are the systemic issues, what are the challenges, and then we'll have to rectify them one by one. This topic is very important, not just from the perspective of GS3, but rather also from the perspective of the essay part. Because we'll be trying to cover different aspects. We'll see, first of all, that why innovation is really important for any country, especially for a country like India, where what we boast is having a kind of a demographic dividend, very young population. Then we'll talk about that what all schemes or what all things, interventions the government has come up with in order to spur, in order to increase the innovation in the overall domain. Then we'll talk about what are the issues, what are the challenges confronting the innovation ecosystem in India. And then finally, we'll have a look at the way forward. Believe me, it's going to be a very, very important discussion. What the authors say in this particular article, which has been published in the Hindu, is that driving India's research, development and innovation story needs a decisive private sector participation. But that's only the one aspect. We'll try to comprehensively cover it, looking at this picture from different perspective, right? First of all, that why innovation is really important. Why innovation is really important for a country like India. We have set a goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047. And when we talk of Viksit Bharat, what you'll have to understand is we are targeting a knowledge-based economy. In order to become a high-income economy, we have to focus upon the knowledge aspect. And when we talk about knowledge, innovation plays a very important role, right? If you really want to scale up to that level. Next thing which you'll have to understand is that if we focus on the innovation aspect in different domains, be it agriculture, e-commerce, the space, the defense aspect, it overall enhances the capability of a nation. What innovation does is that it determines the productivity growth. It determines the industrial competitiveness. It determines the defense capabilities of a nation and the overall power structure, right? So it helps in the economic growth. Because once you have innovation, definitely you would try to integrate technology in various processes, and that would significantly increase the efficiency of the overall system, right? Then we have the global competitiveness. We are not just focusing upon the domestic competitiveness. We'll have to focus upon global competitiveness. We'll have to make sure that whatever products we are manufacturing, they should be competitive at the global level. They should be competitive with respect to the product which is being produced by Bangladesh or Vietnam or any other country or even China, right? Then we have technological sovereignty, very, very important. If you really want to focus on becoming the superpower, or what you call yourself as Vishwaguru, you'll have to make sure that you have your own indigenous base of development with respect to technology. Right now, what we are witnessing is we are dependent upon the imports of core technological platforms. I'm saying core technological platforms, be it the information technology, be it the hardwares. Let's just talk about the electric vehicles, the battery storage systems. We are focusing upon clean energy. There's no doubt about it. But what about the solar modules? What about the cells? We are importing from China. So we are still dependent upon the imports with respect to the core technological platforms. Then we have high skill jobs. Right now, what we have is we are witnessing a job polarization where we have the low skilled workers. For example, let's talk about the delivery partners. We call these startups that they are focusing upon the technology. But in the end, what they are creating? We have numerous delivery partners. You tell me that what skill a person is gaining by working as a delivery partner. Are we focusing upon the skill acquisition or skill enhancement? No. On the other hand, we have the high paying, technologically intensive jobs, but very few in number. The AI scientists, the engineers. So there is a job polarization. So we'll have to make sure that we skill our workforce. We integrate technology, and that can only happen if we focus on the innovation aspect. I hope it is clear. But still, not everything is bad. There are good signs also. There is a silver lining. Once we look at the key indicators, what you'll find is, according to the Global Innovation Index, which is released by the World Intellectual Property Organization, in 2025, the GII, India was placed at 39th position out of 138 countries. 39th position out of 138 countries. And this we have seen a significant improvement as far as the year 2015 is concerned, because we were at 81st position. So we have basically got to 38th position. And second thing which you'll have to understand, again I'm repeating, from 2015 where we were at 81st position, now we are at 38th position according to Global Innovation Index 2025. Second thing which you'll have to understand is, according to the same report, we are the top performer as far as the low middle income countries are concerned. Third thing is that we are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Third largest startup ecosystem. And we are one of the countries where we are witnessing a very good trajectory, a very good growth rate with respect to the venture capital funding, the angel investors in different domains. So these are the four things which you can understand, right? But as I said, there are striking contradiction in the research, development and innovation domain. How? I'll tell you. On one hand, we have the strong government commitment, and there is no denial to this fact. Government, especially in the last 10 years, has been focusing upon spurring, increasing innovation in different ecosystems through various schemes. Let's talk about through various policy interventions. Let's talk about the National Semiconductor Mission or National Mission on Critical Minerals. So government is definitely doing that. We have entrepreneurial spirits. We have different startup founders coming up with various ideas. But what we find is that when we look at the outcome, it is again suboptimal. And this is a kind of a paradox, that on one hand, you have the government supporting the players. We have different schemes. Government is definitely providing the funding. But still, we have suboptimal outcomes. Suboptimal, weak core innovation outcomes. Why? When we talk about the overall spending with respect to the research and development, it is still very less in India if you compare with the other countries. Let alone, we are not comparing ourselves with US or let's say South Korea. Over there, definitely they're developed countries, advanced countries. But even if we compare ourselves with countries like China, we have very low participation of the private sector. Once we talk about our influence in the global technological domain, it is very less. We are not influencing. Definitely we are working. We have come up with various startups in the AI domain or the other domains. But still, if you look at the overall picture, it is not good. We have weak participation of the private sector, as I told. We have low R&D spending. And we have very minuscule influence as far as the global technological domain is concerned, right? So this is a kind of a paradox, a contradiction which exists. Now, the root cause, it is no longer the lack of policy intent. ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई policy intent नहीं है. There is policy intent by the government. Government is definitely trying to focus on these areas. But what you'll have to understand is that there are issues with respect to the execution. Policy doesn't work, the implementation works. And the same thing goes with the civil services aspirant. You must have seen civil service aspirant, making very good timetables and very good plans and everything. But it would only work once you implement that. So you'll have to implement, right? And industry engagement. Here I'm talking about the private sector. Private sector in India, it is not engaging in the overall innovative aspect, in the overall innovation domain, right? There is very less participation of the private sector. So this is overall thing which you'll have to understand. These are the indicators. You can just have a look. Now, what have been the government initiatives? And this is a promising push, definitely. The very first is with respect to the financial support, because at the very base lies the financial support, right? So we have come up with the research, development and innovation fund to the tune of almost 1 lakh crores. Then we have almost a corpus of 18,000 crores with respect to deep tech startups. Deep tech startups, I'm talking about in terms of the artificial intelligence, cloud computing, quantum computing, right? Then we have tax incentives. We are giving tax incentives to various startups and corporates if they are investing in the technological domain, right? Then we have investment in the digital infrastructure. You talk about the laying of the internet cables, BharatNet, or you talk about the fiber optics, right? You talk about the infrastructure. We have gone with the India stack, right? We have the India stack. Once we talk about the Jandhan, Aadhaar and mobile, Jam Trinity. So we have been working in this domain, definitely, right? Government is trying its best to make sure that we have, it's actually providing the base on which you can create technologies, on which you can innovate, right? Next, we have talent and early innovation. We have been focusing, you must be aware of the Atal Innovation Mission, AIM, Niti Aayog's. Now, Niti Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission, it has one of the component which is Atal Tinkering Labs, which focuses upon increasing the entrepreneurial skills, increasing the interest of students in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, from classes 6 to 12th. So it is coming up with various labs and various instruments so as to make sure that children develop the interest in the STEM domain, right? Next, we have the regulatory reforms. What we have done is, previously there were entry requirements, that if you want to avail some benefits with respect to with what the government is providing as far as a startup is concerned, you should be in existence for a period of 3 years. Now we have removed that. Let's talk about the Shanti Act. Once we talk about the expansion of nuclear power is concerned, now we have allowed the private sector participation as operators as far as the nuclear energy is concerned. So definitely government is broadening the base, and this would definitely make sure that we have more of innovation in the domain. But there are challenges, there are deep challenges. The paradox, high intent versus weak fundamentals. These are the challenges, right? Because we have a question, and over there you would be asked what are the challenges. So these are the challenges which we would be discussing in great detail. The very first thing which you'll have to understand is that we have low R&D intensity. We have very less investment. We invest very less in the R&D, in the research and development, when we compare ourselves with the other countries. We have only about 0.64 to 0.65% of GDP. This is the only investment we have in the research and development. 0.65%. And for countries like South Korea, it's almost 4% of GDP. For countries like Japan, it is 3%. For countries like US, it's 3.5% of GDP. And even for a country like China, it's almost 2.5% of GDP. Look at the overall corpus of the GDP of China, right? And 2.5%, it's huge. The overall GDP, once we compare the overall GDP of China with that of India, it's huge, mammoth. And over there, what they're doing is they are investing almost 2.5% of their GDP in the research and development. And we are, at first place, we have a low GDP. Second, we are investing just 0.65%. So again, this is a cause of concern. Because if you really want to compete with other countries at this point of time, where we have the emergence of new technologies, be it artificial intelligence, cloud computing, we have different data centers coming up, right? So you'll have to invest in innovation. This is indispensable. Okay? Low investment limits cutting edge research. Obviously, if you'll not be investing properly in the research and development domain, how would you be able to compete with the other countries? Let alone other countries. I'm not talking about other countries. How would you be able to manufacture those items, those goods and services? which are more efficient as compared to the others. So this is again a cause of concern. Then we have weak private sector participation. This is again a very serious cause of concern. Once we look at the countries like US, over there in the overall investment, once we're talking about the overall investment, more than 70% of the investment comes from the private sector. For a country like China, the private sector contributes to almost 77% of the overall investment. Can you imagine? More than 3/4 of the overall investment in the research and domain in these countries is coming from the private sector. Whereas for India, this is almost 41%. And this has recently increased, primarily because of the government interventions. Previously, it was almost 1/3, 33%. So you'll have to understand, in India, we have the government, which is the dominant investor. The dominant investor as far as the research and development is concerned. And this is a cause of concern. Because ultimately, see, government has its own competitive priorities. Sarkar ko bhai, it has to invest in agriculture. It has to invest in social sectors. It has to invest in building roads and infrastructure, pipelines and everything. It can't be doing the research work just on its own. We have centers of excellence in terms of the Indian Council for Agriculture Research. We have the Indian Council for Medical Research. We have DRDO and all other organizations. But we'll have to make sure that there is also, and if not, at least equal participation of the private sector. That is again very, very important. Second thing which you'll have to understand, which comes to my mind, is that in India we see the reluctance of the private sector. देखिए, अगर आपको कोई चीज, if you have to basically come up with a very disruptive technology, right? If you're coming with a very good idea which has a potential to disrupt the market, what you'll have to understand is that these technologies require a lot of time. What we say is that they're having a long gestation and they are very risky. It requires very good amount of capital. Okay? First thing, as I told, that it requires a lot of capital. Second, it has a long gestation period. Now in India, first of all, we have the enterprises, जो भी companies हैं, different corporates. What you'll have to understand is they have a very myopic vision, very myopic. Myopic means short-sighted. They are just focusing upon a very short-term orientation. They just have a very small, narrow outlook. They are not looking at long-term benefits. So they are not investing in technological domain. Okay? First of all, they have lack of capital, and whatever capital they have, they are investing on those things. आपने सुना होगा, you must have heard that we focus on frugal innovation. Frugal innovation मतलब भाई लोग थोड़ा बहुत आपने incremental innovation कर दिया. In true sense, that is not innovation. Just because you know that the purchasing power of people in India is less. So you focus on the frugal innovations. For example, Tata Nano हो गया. ठीक है? Or you can talk about the portable X-ray machines. But you are not focusing upon the high risk, high reward area. So that is something which you'll have to understand, right? The psyche or the mentality of the private sector, it has to be changed. Next, we have the domestic patents versus global influence. Now, यहाँ पर there's one improvement which is there. As far as the filings of the domestic patents is concerned, we have definitely improved. So in 2020-21, there were almost 59,000 filings of the patents which were there. Now it has substantially increased to more than 1.1 lakhs, right, in 2025. So there has been an increase. But question ye hai, the question is that how far it is able to increase India's stature at the global level. Because once we talk about the global patent cooperation treaty applications, we'll find that still the number of patents which India is applying at the international level, they are very less. Right, they're very less. Almost 4,500 patents in the year 2025. For a country like China, this tunes to almost 77,000 patents. For countries like US, it's almost 50,000. Even for a small country like Switzerland, it tunes to almost 5,300 patents. The international patents. तो इसका मतलब क्या है? What does it imply? If you are increasing, if you are having a scenario where you have a good number of domestic patents and research papers, it implies that there is research going on. But whether that research can be scaled for commercial purpose, that is a question. And if the overall patents at the international level are less, it means your products, whatever research you're doing, it's mostly theoretical. It's not pragmatic. It's not practical. It's not something which can be easily commercially scaled to a product or a service. तो ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट है. अगर आपको स्केल करना है कमर्शियली at commercial level, so you'll have to make sure that you invest in different aspects in the practical application of that technology, right? So this is again a cause of concern. Commercial scalability is a cause of concern. Then we have weak university industry linkage. Yes, very very important area. Another point of concern with respect to the innovation aspect in India is that whatever we are teaching in the college and institutes, in fact in the top tier colleges including the IITs or the NITs, in some of the IITs definitely there is cutting edge research which is going on, but still if you look at the overall picture, there is a kind of a mismatch between what the industry wants and what they are teaching. They are still focusing upon the theoretical aspects. They're still focusing upon those obsolete topics which are not really relevant in the current world. So these are some of the areas, right? And we suffer from three issues. We suffer from three issues in terms of, first of all, that we have a very poor IP ecosystem, intellectual property ecosystem. ठीक है, intellectual property ecosystem बहुत poor है. Second, we have a very fragmented structure, as I told you. Fragmented structure in terms of what the industries demands and what we are providing. Next thing is that even in these research centers and the institute, there is dearth of capital. भाई अगर आप चाहते हैं कि इन centers of excellence में, if you really want in these centers of excellence, people should focus upon the innovation and come up with a unique product. You'll have to give them the capital, right? So they don't have the adequate capital. And that's the reason you will also find that the best minds in these colleges, sometimes they really want to work in India. But once they see all these things, once they see that there is lack of capital, there's lack of support, incubators nahi hai, startups conversion nahi ho pa raha hai, they're not able to convert their idea commercially because of different reasons. So what they do is they go to different countries. And over there, they have a lot of money. Those countries definitely provide a lot of money to them. And therefore, ultimately, they decide to stay in those countries itself. We have most of the founders, the founder of Perplexity, right? So you'll have to understand, we have the best of the brains of India who go to those countries and work over there. So this is again a very important issue which you'll have to understand, right? So these are some of the issues which are basically plaguing the academic aspect. So in those countries where you'll find that the innovation is at a very good level, you'll find that there are three aspects which are given equal importance. Pehli cheez kya hai? Pehli is the academics. Over there, they are giving very good amount of focus as far as the academics is concerned. Second, they are focusing upon. Second, what they are focusing upon is the industries. The industries themselves are providing the adequate capital. And third, they're also focusing upon the finances. The government is definitely helping with the finances as far as these startups are concerned. Next, we have the human capital gaps in innovation. Again, very, very important factor. Human capital gaps, what I'm trying to say is that even in India, we have certain issues. And even the Global Innovation Index report talks about India. We score very poor. We have a very poor ranking as far as we have rank 95 as far as the employment in knowledge intensive sectors is concerned. So we are not having adequate employment opportunities in the knowledge intensive sectors. Rank 80 in the number of researchers. We're not having the adequate number of researchers, right? Rank 101 in the employment of women with advanced degrees. This is also something which you'll have to understand. There is gender disparity which is there in the STEM domain. Women are not getting the equal opportunities. So there are issues, right, according to GII. And this I told you with respect to India. Gender diversity challenges. We have different schemes. For example, we have Vidushi. Now, Vidushi is a scheme which focuses upon it encourages and supports the women from the years of 42 to 65 years of age to come and join the research ecosystem in the STEM domain. Then we have, for example, the other scheme. We have WISE scheme, right? We have WISE scheme, Women in Science and Engineering. So this particular scheme focuses upon making sure that we reduce the gender disparity in the STEM domain. This is by the Department of Science and Technology. But the issue is, what you'll have to understand, that these schemes are quite nascent. They have just come almost they've just come before 10 years or let's say before 5 years. So it's a very small time to judge the effectivity of the schemes, whether the schemes would be able to bring some result or not, right? Would they be able to increase the participation of women in the overall domain, in the overall innovation domain, that is again uncertain, right? Then we have the structural weakness, lack of industrial transformation. देखिए इंडिया में, and see again I'm elaborating on these issues so that you have a clear picture. See, the very objective of analysis is to make you understand the whole story, right? What is the context, what is the issue, what are the challenges, and what should be done, right? So over here we are trying to focus upon the analysis part. Once we talk about the structural weakness, if you look at the pattern of the industrial development which India has seen, you will see that we have shifted from the agrarian to the service-led model. We have not focused adequately on the manufacturing domain. And that is what the government is trying to do. Government is trying to increase the gross value addition of the manufacturing sector in the overall output. That is what the government is also trying to do. So, abhi kya hai, once we compare ourselves with the East Asian economies, you take for example the case of the mainland China, or you take the case of Japan or South Korea or Taiwan or Hong Kong. What they did initially was that they had a kind of the industrial development which was based on labor intensive sectors. Again, I'm repeating it. They focus upon the labor intensive industrial development. ठीक है, तो initially उन लोगों ने क्या किया? They focus on the labor intensive industrial development. Once their population began to stabilize, then they switched to the capital intensive. Then they basically made the integration of technology. And then they worked upon the technological progress. But in India, what we have seen is we have directly jumped to the technological aspect. And in that sector too, we're not performing well. So we are having a services-led model. If we had focused equitably on the manufacturing domain, things would have been different. And that is the reason government is trying to focus on the manufacturing aspect, right? East Asian economies, I've already explained. Then we have the biggest fault line, the weak research to market linkage. This is again very, very important. See, if you really want your idea to succeed, if you want that your idea should basically succeed in terms of the profits, you have to make sure that it is easily transferable from lab to the market. If your idea is not in a condition to be transferred from the lab to the market, it won't succeed. What is really required, or what the scenario in India is, that definitely we are focusing on the research. We are focusing upon the development. But once it comes to the commercialization aspect, once it comes to the scaling, over here we are suffering. So we are not able to commercially scale that technology, primarily because whatever research we are doing, it is still theoretical in nature. It is still not based upon the pragmatic needs of the society, the practical needs of the society. The second factor can be that we don't have the adequate capital. Whatever capital we have, that is very minuscule. That is not adequate, because these technologies are having a long gestation. They require a good amount of risk capital, which we don't have, right? Then these are the missing elements. We don't have a proper ecosystem with respect to the intellectual property. We don't have the adequate risk capital. We don't have the industry clusters. East Asian economies का एक और फायदा था, एक और perspective था, that they did the development on the basis of the industrial clusters. So they focused upon the economy of scale, right? So that is something which you'll have to understand. Other hurdles, if we talk about, we have the bureaucratic procedures. There is fragmented governance. Let's say we have Department of Science and Technology. Then we have Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, if Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology wants to come up with a particular scheme, it would have to coordinate with the Department of Science and Technology. But there are coordination issues. There is fragmented governance. We have a federal structure where we have the state governments. Sometimes the policies of state governments do not align with that of the central government. So there are these issues. Then there are socio-cultural challenges. In a country like India, and this you would very well understand, we focus more on job security. And that is the reason you see that why so many people are striving to qualify the government services exam. We do not give adequate importance to those careers in the research. Have you seen, you would have rarely seen parents saying that they want their child to become a scientist. But you would often hear parents saying that they want their child to become an IPS or IAS officer. So that is the kind of psyche we have. We are not focusing upon the research careers. And we are also not encouraging the women to enter the STEM domain, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So ये एक scenario है which I try to explain, and again you can just have a look from this particular part also, right? But the good part is we have the silver lining. We have certain emerging opportunities, sunrise sectors in terms of the space sector startups. We have Agnikul, we have Dhruva Space, right? Many of the startups have been coming in the space domain, and space domain through the in space has been broadened. There is participation of the private players. Then we have deep tech innovations. Recently in the Global AI Summit, Impact Summit, we saw the Servam AI, the indigenous platform. So these are good, news, and definitely these are the linings which would encourage the other entrepreneurs in the domain. Then we have future technologies. We are definitely now focusing upon for example, the 6G. We are focusing upon. We are coming up with the standards, new standards with respect to 6G. So if India would do so, definitely it would enhance India's position in the overall domain, right? Now, what should be the way forward? करना क्या चाहिए हम लोगों को? It's not just about increasing the R&D spending, it's about substantially increasing. You'll have to increase your R&D spending to the tune of almost 2.5% of GDP. At least match that quantum with respect to China. I'm not saying in terms of the overall quantum of money, but I'm saying in terms of the percentage of GDP. At least 2.5% of GDP. And how you can do so? By coming up with various mechanisms. Government cannot do each and everything. The private sector would have to step in, right? And what is really required is we can go with public-private partnerships for different projects. We can give more of incentives to the corporates, that we would give you incentive if you focus more upon the R&D, right? There can be different mechanisms, tax incentives, right? Then we have the strengthening of the private sector role. Again, PPP, innovation linked procurement. For example, we have the government e-marketplace, GEM portal. So over there, you focus on these things, that you just make it a condition that our procurement, whatever procurement the government is doing, it would be based upon those enterprises which showcase certain innovative abilities. So this would be an indirect push to these SMEs, to these enterprises, to focus more upon the entrepreneurial aspect, to focus more upon the innovation. Okay? Then we have building a strong university industry ecosystem. What we can do is we can open technological transfer offices. For example, we have the placement offices, right, in different colleges. Why not come up with the technology transfer offices? Why not have the collaboration between various industry houses and good colleges on a PPP base, where the government also invests? Let's create the centers of excellence, where let's say Mahindra as a company, or let's say Tata as a company, collaborates with, let's say, IIT Madras or IIT Bombay, or even other colleges. So that is how you will make sure that there is, the industry is going to tell that what we really demand. Why we are still relying on the imports of technology. Can you provide this to us at a more economical price, right? So this should be definitely done. Collaborative labs. Then we have deep tech focus. बहुत हो गया, we have focused upon Tata Nano and other things. Right now we need radical shift. There is a need for a radical shift to those areas, deep tech startups. भाई focus करिए artificial intelligence पे, focus on cloud computing, data centers, because this is the future. AI is the future, right? Then we have human capital development. We'll have to promote STEM. We'll have to make sure that in almost each and including these state universities, in all colleges and institutions, we have certain STEM courses. And not just STEM courses. We'll have to make sure that they are in line with the market needs, with the current needs, right? Then we have women participation. We have definitely good schemes for the women participation in the STEM domain, but we'll have to look into their efficacy. Are the schemes doing something? Just before a few days, I read an article that the government of India came up with a particular scheme with respect to the participation of women in the STEM domain, but the funds have not been released for years. So if you have scheme just on papers, nothing is going to happen, right? Then we have strengthening the innovation financing. We need patient capital funds. You should not be, impatient with respect to the outcome of these innovation. कि भाई अभी invest किया, get the returns. No, they require a lot of time, and they are very risky areas. So you need patient capital. You need those venture funds which can invest for years. There has to be continuous sustained funding to these startups and the other institutes also. Then we have risk sharing mechanisms. By risk sharing mechanisms, we mean what? That some amount of risk should be shouldered by the government, or there has to be a kind of a pool in where different players come and they share the responsibility if the enterprise fails. So we'll have to take the responsibility. Then we have create innovation driven industrial policy. We cannot just focus upon the assembly. तो अभी तक हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? We have been doing the assembly. We have been importing the raw materials. We have been importing the components, and then we are assembling them. No. Right now, this is the time that we focus upon the designing and the manufacturing aspect. Very, very important. You must have seen the iPhones where it says design in California. So we'll have to design in New Delhi, right? Or design in Hyderabad or Bengaluru. We have very good innovation clusters. Government is doing that, but we'll have to focus on that. Ultimately, what we'll have to understand is that we should not just limit ourselves calling ourselves as a startup nation. We have startups in different countries. Rather, we'll have to focus upon deep tech innovative power. If we really want to attain that status of Vishwaguru, we'll have to focus upon technological sovereignty. और technological sovereignty के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा? You have entrepreneurial spirits, you have a good policy intent, but there are weaknesses in the system. There are systemic issues. तो आप उन issues को rectify करिए. Only then you will be able to achieve this particular status, and only then you will be able to be technologically independent. Because right now we are having a lot of dependency. So I hope it is clear. Let's have a mains practice question. We had a very comprehensive discussion. Now I really want you to write the answer. India's innovation challenge today is less about policy intent and more about structural and execution deficits. The issues. Discuss the factors responsible for India's underperformance in research, development and innovation despite strong government initiatives. We have discussed the paradox, the challenges, these, right? Suggest measures to strengthen the industry-led innovation in a country. The kind of content we are providing, it's very easy for you to write the answer because almost, it is in the same structure of the discussion. The question is framed in the same structure. So I would really urge you, I would really advise you to write the answers. And yes, if you're liking the discussion, please do not forget to press the like button and also let us know in the comments. Let's now go to the next topic. Now coming to the next topic, this is about the women's political participation in India. Now this has been published in the Hindu. Now what this particular column talks about is a research done by Lokniti CSDS, the survey, and they have come to certain conclusions. Now what you'll have to understand is that in the main examination, what really matters is the substantiation of the argument. Many times we have the argument, but we don't have the proper data points or the examples to substantiate. And that is really very important because that is how you improve the value addition aspect in your answers. So over here, what the article tells us is about a lot of data points which can be directly used in the answers. Obviously, there are a lot of data points. Not every data is important, but still, even if you keep a track of 4 to 5 data points, definitely it is going to increase the quality of your answer. We all know that once we talk about the participation of women in politics, it's very minuscule, it's very suboptimal in India. But this article gives us that data point which can substantiate. It tries to explain the whole picture with the help of the data which has been sourced from the survey, right? Again, what the authors in this article are trying to say is that as far as the turnout of the voters, women voters is concerned in India, we see a very good picture. But that is not reflected in terms of the kinds of number of women representatives we have. We have good number of women representatives at the third tier, definitely. Once we talk about the PRIs, Panchayati Raj institutions and the municipalities, which were integrated, which were made apart, which were constitutionalized actually through the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. But once we talk about the representation, the women representatives at the central, at the union level and at the state level, it is quite minuscule. And therefore, we'll have to focus on this aspect. We already have the women reservation bill, but the issue with that is that would be made applicable after the delimitation is carried, after the census figures are there, right? So it's going to take a lot of time. It would take, according to the former election commissioner, Mr. Qureshi, he said in one of the recent articles that it is going to take almost a decade. So this, we cannot wait for that long, and we'll have to come up with some solid interventions so as to make sure that there is adequate participation of women as women representatives, right, as leaders, not just as voters. Now, what the article says is that we have a kind of a democratic paradox. Over the past 6 decades, women participation in elections has transformed dramatically. once we look at the numbers, once we look at the participation of women in terms of or as voters, it has significantly improved. But the paradox is that once we talk about as representatives, as leaders of the people, still their participation is very minuscule. And we'll look at the numbers, right? Rise of women as voters. If you can just look at this particular infographic, the year-wise difference between male and female voter turnout between 1967 and 2024 Lok Sabha elections. This talks about the difference, right? So once we talk about the 1967 and 71 elections, you will see that the difference was almost to the tune of 10 to 11, right? But now with the time, the difference has narrowed, right? The difference has narrowed. Reasons earlier, what were the reasons for this? That why we had big amount of difference between the men and the women. Why? As voters, because there was pervasive illiteracy. The mobility was restricted. The mobility of women was restricted. And overall, the patriarchal society, the entrance notions, it did not allow women to even cast their vote, right? So that were the reasons. But after 71, what we have seen is there has been a gradual convergence. There has been a gradual convergence, and what we are seeing is that more and more number of women are participating as voters, right? This particular gender gap has narrowed. That is what you'll have to see, right? The gender gap has narrowed. And in 2009, 2024, you can see, we have this 2009 and 2024, it was somewhere around 4.4 and this was around 1.6, right? So you can just see that it has narrowed. And in fact, once we talk about the 2019 and 24, the picture has turned very positive. We have a positive aspect over here, where more numbers of women have come as voters in comparison to men. That is what you'll have to understand. So it's a very good news. Now, once we look at the same thing at the state level, the picture is even better, right? So if you just look at the early 1990s, we have from 90s to 92, we have then from 2005 to 7. After 2011, there have been more participation of women as voters as compared to the men. Just look at this. Just look at this. We have from 2011 onwards, there has been the positive picture, and this is in fact much better at the national level, much better than at the national level. In fact, at the state level, more and more women are participating as voters, and this is a very good news, right? Sustained mobilization of women voters. This signifies that women have this particular capacity. They have this particular notion that they should participate in the elections, specifically at the state level. So this is a good news. Now, once we talk about the other things, participation beyond voting, persistent gender gaps. Now, if you just look at this particular infographic, again, I'm saying that these infographics, these datas, they are self-explanatory in nature, and they would try to enhance your understanding with respect to the women participation. So very important. Gender-wise participation in political activities over the years. Once we talk about different campaign activities, be it the rallies or the meetings, or in terms of the processions being carried out by the political parties, or in terms of the door-to-door canvassing, right? You would see that less of women participate in comparison to men. Almost, men are almost double of the women. Just look at this number. Just 9% women in 2009 election participated in the meetings and the rallies. On the other hand, almost 28%. Look at the same number for women in 2014. It has increased to 15%. But again, for men, it has also increased to 34%. So you can just see that the number of women who are participating in different activities which are related to the election aspect, it is quite less as compared to the men, right? Voting parity does not translate into equal political activity. Voting is one of the very important political activities, but there are other activities also which primarily showcase your interest in the political domain. What is your interest as far as the politics is concerned? So we have less of participation of women. You can just also have a look at the other points. Then social constraints on political participation. A major barrier is lack of autonomy. Means what? That they are not capable, the women are not capable of having their own decisions. Their decisions are based upon what their spouse or what their family members want. Look at this. The share of those who said that they needed permission to participate in the political activities. So you can just imagine almost more than 60% of the women in different domains, in order to attend a political rally or attend a candidate meeting, join a protest, they need the permission of their family. So this is a kind of a social constraint. And why this is so? Because of the entrenched patriarchal notions we have. Entrenched patriarchal notions. The mindset we have. Right? Because we believe, still in some parts of the country, that women can't have their own opinions. Right? They can't have their own political opinions. So that is what you'll have to understand. They can have, definitely, why not? Representation gap in the parliament. So we saw a good picture that as voters, things are very hunky and dory. Things are very good. But what about their participation as representatives? Once we talk about the voting aspect, once we talk about the representation aspect, it is again very poor. It is not as same as the voting aspect. In 1952, only 22 women MPs were there. And in 1977, it fell to 19. Just have a look at this infographic, right? And it fell to almost 19 in 1971, right? Slowly, we have seen the increase in the number of women representatives. We are talking about the members of parliament as far as Lok Sabha is concerned, the House of the People, right? 2019, we hit a record, and that was 78 women MPs, and now it has again declined to 74. That tunes to almost 14% of the overall Lok Sabha seats. We have almost 50% of the women population. And as a percentage, we are having just 14% of the representatives of the people in the Lok Sabha as women. So this is also something which does not reflect the reality, the true reality. Okay. Next, we have the nomination bottlenecks. ठीक है भाई, ये तो representatives हो गए आपके. These are the representatives. What about how many women are actually filing the nomination, are actually fighting the elections as candidates? Underrepresentation begins with candidate selection. So it's not like, more number of women are contesting elections and less are winning. It's not like that. In fact, we'll just see that the winnability of the women candidates is more than that of the men. But at the very start itself, we are having less number of women as contestants, as candidates. Look at this. The red portion, the maroon portion is with respect to the female candidates. We have just few hundred. Initially, the number was even minuscule. Right now, we just have, in comparison to the blue strip, look at this. We have very less women contestants, very less women candidates. So this is again a cause of concern. We have women candidates in just hundreds. And we have the male candidates in thousands. So at the very start, you are not giving the opportunity to the women to fight the elections. How would they win the election? So this is again a cause of concern. In 1957, 45 women candidates were there, just 45. In 2024, 800 candidates. And we have thousands of the male candidates, right? Next aspect is the myth of low electability. People have this notion that women have low electability. They have lesser chances of winning the elections. Again, this is not correct. Why? Because we'll just see. Look at this. Success rate of male and female candidates in Lok Sabha elections. Look at this. The red strip is far more than that of the blue strip. Talk about 1957 elections. Look at the difference, the success rate. The success rate of the women candidates was far more than that of, even in 1957, that of the men. And this trend has continued even in 2024. Even for 2024 or be 2019 or be 2009, what you will see is that the winnability of women candidates is more. So we'll have to make sure, first of all, we'll have to, put this notion in dustbin, that women have less chances of winnability. Second, what you'll have to understand is we'll have to field more candidates. More candidates need to fight the elections. I hope it is clear. And data contradicts that. Then we have limited political autonomy. Political autonomy bhi nahi hai. Okay. In terms of even voting decisions may not be fully independent. 52% consider it important to share political views with the family. Look at this, very important. How women perceive having the same political views as their families. Very important, somewhat important. So bhai, almost 52% women to ye khud hi bol rahi hain. They themselves are saying that we need to have the same political view as our family. So bhai, this is also a point of contention. Change begins at the very root itself. So if you really want women to participate effectively and in good numbers in the elections, not just as voters but as representatives, women will have to first themselves change the mindset. That is again very important, right? Next aspect is that of structural barriers to political entry. Women perceive politics as unequal terrain, and this is definitely so. This is true. Institutional biases reinforce gender imbalance. The share of women who agree to the with the following statements about the structural barriers: easier for women with a political background to enter politics. Yes. Easier for women from upper economic status to join politics, 57%. Parties routinely favor men over women. 44% of the women feel that. Voters are more likely to vote for men than women, almost 44%. So we'll have to understand there are biases. There are institutional biases which are there. We'll have to make sure that we end these biases first. Very, very important. Then we have broader social challenges. Women identify multiple barriers. See, women we definitely say that they suffer from time poverty. We have mothers and sisters in the home, and you must have seen that they have dual responsibility. They take care of their children, they take care of the household, and in addition, they also fulfill their professional obligations. So this is not something which is very easy, right? So this restricts the choices of women. This restricts the women from entering into the political arena. So we'll have to make sure that there is equal burden at home too, right? Equal sharing of responsibility. Okay. Way forward, if you can just look at this, the reasons women are prevented from joining the politics: patriarchal structures, household responsibilities, individual barriers, and then you can just have a look. What should be the way forward? We already had the Women Reservation Bill in 2023, but its implementation, if you just look at the current, speed of how the things are going as far as census and then delimitation is concerned, it would take at least 2032 and 2033 for full implementation, according to the former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Qureshi. It would take almost a decade then. So we can't wait for that long. We'll have to come up with some other alternatives, right? Representation must translate into real decision-making power. And even when you have increased the representation, the number of women, you'll have to make sure that you increase their overall power, the decision-making power. Social barriers must also be addressed. The entrenched patriarchal notions must be changed. Women must be allowed, women must be given that space to enter the politics. Their burden needs to be shared. Burden with respect to their responsibilities as far as the household is concerned, and also their professional commitments. So this is what you'll have to understand. I think we have discussed in a comprehensive way the issues. Now let's have a question. It's just a 10-marker question. Despite achieving near parity in voter turnout, women in India remain underrepresented in legislative bodies. Examine the factors responsible for this gap between electoral participation and political representation. The gap between as voters and as representatives. Suggest measures to enhance women's substantive political empowerment. Measures we have just discussed. So do write, it's a 10-marker, 150 words. Definitely it's going to improve your answer writing abilities. Let's go to the next section. Come to the prelims pointer section. We have the very first topic which talks about the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. So India has co-sponsored a particular motion raised by the GCC countries and the United Nations Security Council, where it has asked, the resolution asks Iran to immediately stop its attack on the neighboring countries, right? So this is something which is very important, and naturally GCC becomes very, very important. The Gulf Cooperation Council was established by an agreement concluded in 1981 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, among Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE. So you can just see these are the participants in the Gulf Cooperation Council. We have Saudi Arabia, important, can be asked in the prelims, that which of the following countries are members of GCC, right? So very, very important. Saudi Arabia, Oman, we have then UAE, we have Bahrain, we have Kuwait, right? And we have Qatar. So these are the 6 countries who are a member of GCC. In view of their special relations, geographical proximity, similar political systems, most of them are autocratic monarchies, right? For example, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, based on Islamic beliefs, joint destiny, common objectives, and presently encompass a total area of this. The official language is Arabic. The GCC members and Yemen are also the members of the Greater Arab Free Trade Area. This is unlikely to affect the framework of the GCC in a major way, as GCC has a more prioritized time framework as compared to GFTA, as it seeks to greater integration. Now, I have taken this snippet from the Ministry of External Affairs, so this is completely authentic, right? GCC comprise some of the fastest growing economies in the world, mainly due to increase in the oil and natural gas revenues, coupled with the building and investment boom. So you can just take the example of Dubai, right? So it is a center, it's a global center of investment, and it is again one of the major centers as far as the technology is concerned, as far as the international summits are concerned, right? So this is very, very important. Most of these economies were affected during the recent economic downturn, have now recovered and are growing at a fast pace. Organization structure: the structure of the GCC countries consists of the Supreme Council, Ministerial Council, and the Secretariat General. The Secretariat is located in the city of Riyadh, can be asked in the prelims. The constitution of GCC precisely reflected the importance of seeking ways to make the unity of Arab states a reality. The constitution required the organization to provide the means for realizing coordination, integration, cooperation in economic, social, and cultural domains. So this is something which you can just have a look, you can just have a reading, and can be really important for the upcoming prelims. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is about a declaration made by the new supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei. Now he has said that we would make sure that we completely shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and he has also imposed certain conditions. He has asked the US to completely shut down its bases in the Middle East. So Strait of Hormuz is again very important. In fact, we know that the Middle East in a state of turmoil. We are witnessing the clashes, we are witnessing the conflicts, and it can even have serious implications on India's energy needs, right? We are already witnessing what is happening as far as the LPG and the other stories or the rumors, what you can say, with respect to the gasoline is concerned. It can turn into reality if the war continues, and this can have serious implications. But what is really important from the UPSC perspective is to have a clear grasp, to have a clear command over this particular area, right? So again, let's start with this particular map. Again, very important, can be asked in the prelims, any of these. So I would try to comprehensively cover all the things. We have the Strait of Hormuz. Now the Strait of Hormuz is between Iran and Oman. Remember that. Strait of Hormuz is between Iran and Oman. This particular section, if you just see over here, it is a part of Oman. And then we have Persian Gulf, we have the other countries. So we have these countries, the oil producing nations, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Whatever oil is produced by these countries, it has to pass through this narrow corridor, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And in the present times, Iran is making sure that except the Chinese vessels, no other vessel is allowed, right, to pass from the Strait of Hormuz. This can have serious implications as far as the energy needs of countries including India is concerned, right? And we have seen Iran bombing various oil tankers being carried through this particular way. Then we have over here Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Bab el-Mandeb is between Yemen and Djibouti and Eritrea. If you can just see, we have this particular area. Now over here, there's some part of Eritrea, there's some part of Djibouti, right? So we have on the western side Djibouti and Eritrea. On the eastern side, we have Yemen, right? Then we have the Red Sea. Now Red Sea, it then bifurcates into two water bodies. We have Gulf of Aqaba and we have Gulf of Suez. We already know that how important the Suez Canal route is, right? So whatever merchandise is going from India, it goes from maybe from any Kandla port or any other port. It then traverses via the Arabian Sea, enters the Gulf of Aden, then it enters the Red Sea, and ultimately it passes through the Suez Canal, further to the Mediterranean Sea, crosses the whole of Europe, and then if it wants to go to Russia, we have it crosses the Baltic Seas, and ultimately it reaches to St. Petersburg in Russia. So this is a very long route. This is what you'll have to understand. Now let's talk about this. We have Gulf of Aqaba, and in Gulf of Aqaba, we have Israel having access to a particular port, very important, and the port is Eilat. Do remember. So Israel has access to a port in the Gulf of Aqaba. Jordan, though it is landlocked, if you just look at this particular country, but it has access to a particular port which is known as Aqaba, right? The city name itself is Aqaba. So just remember that. Jordan also has access to the Red Sea via the Gulf of Aqaba, and the port is Aqaba. You can just have a look. Now once we have this Red Sea, let's say a ship is coming, a vessel is carrying some commodities, and it is entering over here. We have the Strait of Tiran. Just look at this. We have two islands, very important. We have the island of Tiran and we have the island of Sanafir. So this is again a very small passage known as the Strait of Tiran. And then it enters into Gulf of Aqaba, where we have Aqaba over here and Eilat over here, right? So very, very important. We have the islands of Gubal, Gulf of Suez, very important route, very important trade route. This is the island I'm talking about. This is Sanafir and this is Tiran. And this is Strait of Tiran. This is Gulf of Aqaba. You must have heard about a very important, and we'll see that. We have over here a very important city in Saudi Arabia, which the Saudi Arabia is constructing. Over here we have a city known as Neom. Right, Neom. So it's the very important city. You can just have a look. I'm just again writing it. So you can just remember that this is Neom. Over here, right? Next part is, I think we've already covered all these things. Correct. So this is, make sure that you just have a track of all these places. We have the Gulf of Aden over here. We have the Arabian Sea. Very, very important locations. Make sure that you have a track of all these places. Very, very important. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, here is a mention of a very important foundation, a very important non-governmental organization which is catering to the needs of millions of students as far as the food needs are concerned. We have Akshaya Patra, right? So Akshaya Patra, we already know that we have the concerns with respect to the LPG, right? So it has switched to alternative fuels. Amid the West Asia crisis that has disrupted the LPG supplies, Akshaya Patra Foundation in Andhra Pradesh has ensured an uninterrupted supply of food to nearly 80,000 beneficiaries by switching to alternative energy sources. Let's talk about the Akshaya Patra organization. The Akshaya Patra Foundation, it's an independent charitable trust registered under the Indian Trust Act of 1882. So it's a trust and it is basically sponsored by ISKCON. You must have heard about the temple, the society, the ISKCON, which believe in God Krishna, right? So they worship God Krishna. So this is primarily funded by ISKCON. Implement the Government of India's PM Poshan initiative. So this implements PM Poshan initiative in many of the areas to solve the scale at the overarching societal issues of classroom hunger and malnutrition of the country. The Akshaya Patra Foundation is a not-for-profit organization headquartered in Bengaluru, India. The foundation strives to eliminate classroom hunger by implementing the PM Poshan midday meal, which was earlier it was called as. It provides nutritious meals to children studying in the government schools and government-aided schools. Akshaya Patra also aims to counter malnutrition and support the right to education of children hailing from socio-economically and challenging backgrounds. So these are the achievements of Akshaya Patra. You can just have a look. And again, these are the focus area, narrative, food for education, for example, midday meal earlier. We have other programs, ICDS, Integrated Child Development Scheme. We have other meals program, sustainability, focuses on the energy aspect, water aspect, waste aspect, and education beyond the midday meal. So it's also focusing upon the education aspect. I hope it is clear. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, here's a mention of the NCERT, National Council for Educational Research and Training. So this is again a very important body. The context is that recently the Supreme Court basically asked NCERT to remove the mention of judicial corruption in its textbook. So this is an article which talks about the whole scenario. It becomes very important for us to basically see that what this particular organization is all about, because many of times we think that NCERT is a statutory body. It's not a statutory body, it's an autonomous organization and it's basically registered under the Societies Registration Act, right? So very, very important. Again, I'm repeating, it's not a statutory body, it's an autonomous organization registered under the Societies Registration Act. It's an autonomous organization set up in 1961 by the Government of India to assist and advise the central and the state governments on policies and programs for qualitative improvement in school education. The major objectives of NCERT are these: undertake, aid and promote, coordinate research as far as education is concerned, school education is concerned, prepare and publish the model textbooks, organize pre-service and in-service training of teachers, develop and disseminate the information educational techniques, collaborate and network with the state educational department. We also have the state education research and training, right, SCERTs for different states. Act as a clearinghouse for ideas and information, act as a nodal agency for achieving the goals of universalization of elementary education. NCERT is an implementation agency for bilateral cultural exchange program. This is very important. Note that you remember this. for bilateral cultural exchange programs with other countries in the field of school education. NCERT does that. The NCERT also interacts and works in collaboration with international organizations, visiting foreign delegations and offering various training facilities to educational persons from developing countries. As per the National Education Policy 2020, NCERT is a nodal agency to develop the national curriculum framework. So according to the new education policy, NCERT is the one which is developing the national curriculum framework. You must have seen, once you open the NCERT, you have the NCF over there. For the early childhood care and education, school education and adult education. Early childhood care and education, part of Article 45 of the Indian Constitution. Early childhood care and education, where the government would strive, the state would strive to provide early childhood care and education to children under the age of 6 years of age, right? So this is what our directive is, part of the DPSPs. The council is headquartered at Sri Aurobindo Marg, New Delhi. Organizational structure: the Union Minister of Education is the president, ex-officio president of the general body of NCERT. The members of the general body include the education ministers of all the states and UTs. The secretary, NCERT, is a convener of the general body. The executive committee is the main governing body of the NCERT. The Union Minister of Education is the president, and the Union Minister of State in the Ministry of Education is the ex-officio vice president. The executive committee is assisted in its work by various standing committees and boards. The functions of the council are looked after by the director, joint director and secretary. So this is a comprehensive view of NCERT. Maybe a question can be asked in the prelims. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the last topic of today's discussion, here's a mention of Beirut, where the Israeli strikes have killed many people. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be looking at this particular location and the wider Levant region, right? Once we talk about the Levant region, what you'll have to understand is that this adjoins the Mediterranean Sea on the eastern side, right? So we have these countries, we have Syria, we have Jordan, we have Israel, we have Lebanon, we have Cyprus as a part of Levant. Remember, these countries, it can be asked in the examination that what Levant comprises of. Now let's talk about this. Important. We have once we talk about the state of Palestine comprises of, first of all, what you'll have to understand is that it is a non-member observer of the United Nations. Palestine, non-member observer of United Nations, and it comprises of two areas. We have the West Bank and we have the Gaza Strip, which comprise of the Palestine. Once you look at the West Bank, you will see that on the eastern side you have the Jordan River. And you also have the country of Jordan over here, and you have the Dead Sea, right? Why it is known as the West Bank? Because it is on the western bank of the river Jordan. You can just see this is the river Jordan, which basically originates from Sea of Galilee, right? Sea of Galilee alternative is also known as Lake Tiberias. Important, Lake Tiberias, right? So alternative name of Sea of Galilee is Lake Tiberias. You have the Jordan River coming from here. Over here, if you can just see, we have Golan Heights. Golan Heights, these are the areas which were primarily under the territory of Syria, but now they are under Israeli occupation. And then we have the Jordan River. On the western bank of the Jordan River, we have the West Bank, right? On the northern side of the West Bank, we have Israel. On the western side, we have Israel. On the southern side, we have Israel. Note that West Bank does not have access to the Mediterranean Sea. It is a Gaza Strip which has access to the Mediterranean Sea, right? And you must have also heard about this particular entry to Egypt, which is Rafah. Right now, the Gaza Strip is totally under the Israeli occupation, right? We have the authorities, they are creating a clampdown. They are because of the security issues, they have completely occupied this particular area, and people are being forced to enter Egypt via Rafah crossing. Rafah crossing is again very important. Please make sure that you remember this, and probably a question can come because this has been in the news. Very, very important. Jordan does not have access to Mediterranean Sea. Over here, what you'll have to understand is we have Lebanon and we have Beirut in Lebanon. Beirut in Lebanon, and Israeli strikes are basically being carried in Beirut. That is what you'll have to understand. That's all from my side. I really hope you like the discussion. All the very best. Thank you so much.